In divorce, the issue of business valuation comes up more frequently, even in modest estates, because many parties are working side businesses. Big and small. Businesses come in all sizes. A business may be a steel factory, a property management office, a real estate broker's office, a coffee stand, or an online eBay store. Initial assumption. For the purpose of this presentation, we will assume that the business we are evaluating was formed during marriage and that the entire business is community property. Buyout. Normally in divorce, the owner or operating spouse will be required to pay the non-operating spouse half of the value of the community property portion of the business. Family court will require the parties to conduct a business valuation. The law requires that the business valuation method used be reasonable and account for all the factors affecting the value of the business. Date of valuation. The date of valuation is the date of trial unless one party asks for an alternate date of valuation. Business valuation factors. The law requires that a business valuation take into account all the relevant factors such as the fixed assets, cash flow and income stream, work in progress, costs advanced, accounts receivable, discounted for collectibility, taxes, cost of collections, goodwill as an ongoing concern, and the business liabilities, to name a few. The investment value. The investment value is the subjective version or approach of the objective standard of fair market value. Basically, the judge in the family court can determine the value of the asset to the operating spouse. This is sometimes called the marital value. For example, the value of a closely held corporation may be determined by the investment value rather than the market value, because a closed corporation stock is not actively traded and therefore there is no market value for that stock. An investment value approach could use one of the following calculations to determine value. 1. Capitalization of excess earnings. 2. Dividend paying capacity. 3. Book value. Or 4. Net asset value. Goodwill. The issue of goodwill is a tricky matter. Goodwill is the expectancy of future earnings based on the expectancy of future patronage of an ongoing business. The value of goodwill is the capitalization of excess earnings. In layman's term, it's the amount of money you can expect to earn based on previous customer loyalty. Goodwill valuation is complicated. This is the reality. Here are some of the steps. 1. Normalization of income. 2. Deduction of value of fixed assets by giving them a reasonable rate of return. And 3. Determination of reasonable compensation of a similarly situated professionals. If the normalized income is greater than reasonable compensation, there is excess earnings. The excess earnings are then capitalized to come up with a goodwill value. 2 bites of the same apple. 1. Child and spouse support is based on the owner's operating business income. 2. However, the owner operating spouse may have to pay the other spouse 1/2 of the value of the business while having to pay the other spouse child and spouse support based on the same income stream used to evaluate the business. Compensating the community for efforts on a separate property business. We assumed up to now that the business was formed during marriage and the entire business was community property. But if a business was owned by one spouse prior to marriage or inherited during marriage, the business is a separate property of the spouse who owned it prior to marriage or inherited it. The business appraiser. If money is available and the business value is large enough, consider hiring a joint business appraiser with the other party. Also, given the complexity of this area, Money permitting, consider retaining a competent attorney. Takeaways. A business evaluation in a divorce proceedings must take into account the following. 1. All the key relevant valuation factors. 2. The most appropriate formulas. And 3. The most representative data in order to obtain the most accurate valuation of the business. Depending on the finances and the value of the business, consider using a professional business appraiser, as well as hiring a competent attorney. The valuation of the business will be used by the family law court judge to determine what one spouse will pay in property equalization buyout to the other spouse for his or her community property interest in that business.